Self-discipline is love, the truth about tough choices. Written by Ronnie Rowland. Published by Growth Literacy Lounge. It doesn't feel like love when the alarm rings at 5 a.m. It doesn't feel like love when you pass up dessert, bite your tongue, or walk away from something that once felt good but now feels heavy. But maybe, just maybe, love doesn't always feel the way we were taught it should. In a culture that wraps love in softness, instant gratification, and self-soothing, we've forgotten its other form, the fierce, unshakable kind that tells the truth, holds the line, and delays pleasure to protect purpose. Self-discipline isn't the opposite of love. It's what love looks like when it grows up. There's a quiet strength in saying no when everything in you screams yes. There's a defiant grace in lacing your shoes on a rainy morning when the world would forgive you for staying in bed. And there's a sacred kind of self-respect in choosing discomfort now so that your future self can live in freedom later. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment, said Jim Rohn. But even more than that, discipline is the bridge between self-sabotage and self-respect. This book is not about hustling harder or punishing your way to perfection. It's about recognizing that every tough choice you make in private is a loud declaration of love. Love for your vision. Love for your future. Love for the version of you that refuses to settle. You won't find fluff here. You'll find fire. Let's reframe what discipline really is, and become the kind of people who love ourselves enough to do the hard thing. Even when no one's watching. Especially then. Chapter 1: Love in the Dark. A single candle flickers in a quiet room. The house is asleep, the world still hushed in shadows, and one figure sits upright, tired eyes scanning pages, muscles aching from the strain of effort, the clock inching past midnight. This is not glamour. This is not inspiration painted in pretty hues. This is devotion. And devotion, in its truest form, is love. We often think of love as light, soft, comforting, immediate. But love also lives in the dark, when no one is clapping, when no finish line is in sight, when the only reward is knowing you didn't quit on yourself. That's where self-discipline begins. Not with fireworks, but with quiet faith. Most people misunderstand discipline. They see it as rigid, cold, even cruel, a way to deprive yourself of joy in the name of progress. But they forget that a parent who makes their child brush their teeth every night isn't being cruel. They're protecting their future smile. Tough love isn't a contradiction. It's a deep, long-view form of compassion. That's what self-discipline is, protecting the parts of you not yet strong enough to protect themselves. Our culture doesn't help. It glamorizes impulse and instant pleasure. Follow your heart, it whispers. Treat yourself. But love doesn't always hand you candy, it sometimes takes the sugar away. It looks you in the eye and says, you're worth more than this. In the 1960s, psychologist Walter Mischel conducted a now-famous experiment at Stanford. Children were given a marshmallow and told they could eat it now, or wait 15 minutes and receive 2. Those who delayed gratification? Decades later, they showed higher academic scores, better health, and more stable relationships. Why? Because they had learned one of the most valuable lessons of all: to choose future reward over present comfort. That's love in action. But this isn't about marshmallows. It's about identity. Every time you resist the easy path, you reinforce a message: I am the kind of person who keeps promises to myself. That's where confidence is born, not in external applause, but in private integrity. Each tough choice becomes a brick in the foundation of who you are becoming. Philosophers have long debated the nature of the good life. Is it found in pleasure? In virtue? In meaning? Self-discipline is where these collide. It is the practice of choosing what is meaningful over what is easy. Of aligning your actions with your highest values, not your passing moods. And that's where fulfillment lives, not in the thrill of indulgence, but in the deep peace of alignment. Consider the athlete who trains in silence. The writer who edits the same paragraph a dozen times. The addict who chooses one more day of sobriety. There's no applause for them in the moment. But each one is writing a love letter to their future self. A quiet, powerful act of belief. And you, here now, are being called into that same love. This chapter isn't meant to convince you that self-discipline is easy. It's not. But it is sacred. Because every time you choose to rise when you could have stayed down, you are choosing love in its most courageous form. Not the kind that pampers. The kind that prepares. Self-discipline is not restriction, it's protection. Tough choices made in private are acts of self-respect. Every hard decision shapes your identity and builds inner trust. Where in your life are you mistaking discipline for deprivation, when it might actually be love in disguise? Tonight, do one small hard thing, not to prove something, but to practice loving your future self. Chapter 2: The Lie of Ease. Imagine a winding forest path, dappled in golden light. To the left, a well-worn trail leads downhill, smooth, effortless, inviting. To the right, a narrow, uphill route snakes into shadows, tangled with roots and resistance. Most travelers, unsurprisingly, veer left. But those who choose the harder path, they emerge into sunlight above the trees, changed. We live in a world obsessed with shortcuts. Life's too short to suffer, we're told. Ads promise six-pack abs in 30 days, fluency in a language in 10 minutes a day, happiness in one click. The message is simple: if it's not easy, it's not worth it. But that's the lie. Ease is not a compass for truth. In fact, it's often the trap that keeps us from transformation. Think about the caterpillar. Inside its cocoon, it doesn't gently stretch into wings. It liquefies, breaks down into biological chaos before rebuilding as something new. That transformation is violent, difficult, hidden. But without it, the butterfly never emerges. The struggle is not a detour. It is the process. Self-discipline is the choice to enter the cocoon. Not because we enjoy pain, but because we understand what waits on the other side of it. The lie of ease tells us to escape the tension. Love tells us to endure it. Modern psychology supports this. Studies on deliberate practice reveal that expertise and mastery are not born of repetition alone but of intentional discomfort, reaching past your current capacity, again and again. It's not doing what's easy that grows you. It's doing what's just beyond your reach. Yet our brains are wired to avoid discomfort. The moment resistance appears, whether in waking early, turning down dessert, or starting a difficult conversation, we interpret it as a signal to stop. But what if we've misunderstood the signal? What if resistance isn't a red light, but a green one? Those who build great lives learn to reframe discomfort. Not as danger, but as data. Not as suffering, but as stretching. There's a story of a monk who, when asked how he found peace, answered, "I learned to sit still with fire in my lap." That's the essence of discipline, not the absence of friction, but the refusal to flee from it. It's not about being hard on yourself. It's about being honest with yourself. Ask, what matters more, your comfort in this moment, or your character in the next one? Every time you choose ease over effort, you reinforce the belief that you're not strong enough to handle hard things. But every time you push through, no matter how small the victory, you prove that you can. And the beautiful paradox? The more often you choose the hard path, the more it becomes your nature. Not because the path changes, but because you do. It's time to stop worshipping ease. Ease is a lullaby, not a legacy. Discipline sings a different song, one of sacrifice, growth, and self-respect. It asks more of you, but it gives more in return. The trail uphill is steep, yes. But it leads somewhere. Ease is seductive but often leads to stagnation. Discomfort is not danger, it's the birthplace of growth. Choosing difficulty strengthens identity and inner trust. Where in your life have you been following the path of least resistance, and what has it cost you? Today, interrupt one comfort-based habit, swap ease for effort, even in something small. Let your mind feel what the climb is like. Chapter 3: The Quiet Promise. There's a moment, subtle and easily missed, that defines everything. It doesn't arrive with a trumpet blast or grand declaration. It happens in silence, when you look at the cookie and walk away, when your alarm rings and you rise instead of rolling over, when you want to lash out but you breathe instead. No one sees it. No one applauds. But in that moment you made a promise. A quiet, sacred promise to your future self. Self-discipline isn't forged in the spotlight. It's built in the shadows, one decision at a time. And what gives it power is not the act itself, but what the act says about who you are becoming. Each time you choose the harder, better thing, you whisper, "I am someone who follows through." That promise isn't flashy. It doesn't impress dinner guests or earn social media likes. But it builds something stronger than recognition. It builds trust. And not just with others, but with yourself. Because trust isn't about whether people believe in you. It's about whether you believe in you. When you repeatedly break promises to yourself, "I'll start Monday, I'll quit tomorrow, just this once," you teach your subconscious that your words don't mean much. Slowly your confidence erodes. Not from failure, but from self-betrayal. The reverse is also true. Every kept promise, no matter how small, reinforces your internal credibility. You begin to walk taller, not because of ego, but because you know you're someone who shows up. In behavioral psychology, this is called identity-based habit formation. It's not just about what you do, it's about who you believe you are. Habits aren't just actions repeated over time. They are declarations of character. When you say no to the second drink, get up for the workout, or finish the book you started, you are casting votes for the kind of person you want to be. But here's the catch: those moments are almost always invisible. No crowd cheers when you go to bed early. No badge unlocks when you practice piano instead of scrolling. And that's where many give up. They confuse discipline with drudgery because the payoff isn't immediate. But just because love is quiet doesn't mean it isn't real. Think of a tree. Its roots grow in silence, pushing deeper through darkness, finding water no one sees. That hidden work is what allows it to stand tall when storms arrive. Self-discipline is root work. It's what stabilizes you when life gets loud. In Greek mythology, Odysseus wanted to hear the siren's song without falling victim to it. So he tied himself to the mast of his ship, instructing his crew to ignore his future pleas. That is discipline, not the denial of desire, but the preemptive protection of your deeper values. It's not about becoming numb. It's about staying aligned. Discipline is love wearing armor. It protects the version of you that's too easily swayed, too tired to remember why it matters. It's the hand on your shoulder saying, "You made a promise. Keep going." In a world of quick fixes and broken commitments, self-discipline stands as a quiet rebellion. A way of living that says, "I don't need applause to do what's right. I need only remember who I am." Self-discipline is a repeated promise to your future self. Trust in yourself is built by showing up consistently, not loudly. Identity shifts when you keep small, unseen commitments. What silent promises have you broken to yourself, and what new promise are you ready to honor? Identify one small promise you can keep today, something doable but meaningful. Keep it, no matter what. Let it root your trust. Chapter 4: When Love Says No. A child reaches for a flame, mesmerized by its dance. The parent's hand moves fast, not out of anger, but instinctual love. "No," they say, pulling the child back from danger. The child cries, not understanding. But the parent isn't trying to be liked. They're trying to protect what the child can't yet see. Love says no. Not because it wants to control, but because it wants to preserve. Self-discipline is that voice inside you, grown wise enough to parent itself. It says no to the midnight craving, no to the toxic text reply, no to the comfort of quitting, not because it doesn't care, but because it cares too much to let you settle. Somewhere along the way, culture flipped the script. Boundaries became buzzkills. Saying no meant you were uptight, joyless, or overly rigid. But the truth is, boundaries are the skeleton of self-respect. Without them, we collapse into chaos. Saying yes to everything means you stand for nothing. But every no, when spoken from love, is a yes to something deeper, your peace, your focus, your future. The marshmallow test taught us about restraint. But restraint is not repression. It is reverence for what matters most. The person who walks past temptation isn't suppressing their desire. They're elevating it. They're saying, I want something more than this. And I'm willing to wait. Consider the athlete who trains instead of parties, the the student who studies instead of scrolling, the entrepreneur who builds instead of binging. Their discipline isn't punishment. It's prioritization. It's love refusing to be distracted by lesser things. Neuroscience affirms this. The prefrontal cortex, the brain's rational control center, is activated during moments of restraint. Every time you override an impulse, you strengthen that circuit. Like muscles trained at the gym, the more you exercise your no, the stronger it becomes. What was once difficult becomes second nature. Not because the temptations vanish, but because your alignment grows stronger than your urges. But make no mistake, saying no is an act of courage. It often comes with loneliness. You might be misunderstood. You might lose approval. But what you gain is far greater: integrity. And integrity is peace without applause. There's a story of a sculptor asked how he carved such a lifelike horse from a block of marble. He replied, "I simply removed everything that wasn't the horse." That is self-discipline. Saying no to everything that isn't aligned with who you are becoming. Not out of shame, but out of clarity. When love says no, it's not shutting a door, it's opening a better one. It's choosing to be faithful to the life you promise yourself, even when no one else sees the vow. That's what makes it sacred. And sacred things are rarely easy. You will have days when the no feels cruel, when your resistance feels like punishment. But pause. Remember the flame. Remember the future. Remember that real love is not permissive, it is protective. It is willing to be misunderstood today to keep you whole tomorrow. You don't need to justify your boundaries. You only need to honor them. Let your no be a shield, not a weapon. Let it guard what's growing inside you. Let it speak clearly: I love myself enough not to be led by every impulse. Because love doesn't always give in. Sometimes it stands firm and says, not this. Not now. Not anymore. Saying no is not rejection, it's redirection toward what matters most. Boundaries are a form of self-respect, not limitation. Discipline builds inner strength by protecting your deepest values. Where in your life is love asking you to say no, not out of fear, but out of wisdom? Identify one area where you've been saying yes out of habit or guilt. Say no once today, and notice the clarity that follows. Chapter 5: The Hidden Cost of Indulgence. A man stands at the edge of a pond, tossing stones into the water. Each ripple seems harmless on its own, barely disturbing the surface. But over time, the ripples collide, distort, and overflow. What began as a quiet indulgence becomes a tide that reshapes the shoreline. That's how it happens. A late night here, a skipped workout there. A passive yes to something that drains you. The third scroll when you promise yourself just one. Each choice feels small, forgettable. But indulgence has a hidden price, paid in identity, energy, and momentum. We rarely calculate the true cost of comfort. It doesn't send a bill. It accumulates quietly. One undisciplined moment doesn't ruin a life, but the story you tell yourself about that moment does. Just this once. Becomes maybe tomorrow. And soon you're standing in a life that looks nothing like the one you meant to build. There's a parable of a farmer who forgets to sharpen his blade. He works harder each day, but harvests less. The blade, once keen and true, now drags through the earth with resistance. The farmer blames the soil, the sun, the season, never realizing that neglect, not fate, dulled his edge. Self-discipline sharpens us. Indulgence, left unchecked, dulls us. Not because we're bad, but because entropy is the default. Without intention, things drift, from clarity to chaos, from vitality to fatigue, from purpose to passivity. The science is clear. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter of reward, spikes with quick pleasures, sugar, screens, shortcuts. But the crash follows fast. Long-term satisfaction, by contrast, is built through delayed gratification. It's the reward that follows resistance. The pleasure that follows effort. It lingers longer because it was earned, not grabbed. But indulgence has a seductive voice. It speaks in the language of now. You deserve this, it says. Why wait? And perhaps you do deserve rest, joy, or celebration. But indulgence isn't about enjoying life, it's about escaping from it. That's the difference. Discipline chooses presence. Indulgence often chooses avoidance. Consider the difference between eating a slice of cake with friends at a birthday and mindlessly devouring a box of cookies alone in frustration. One is celebration. The other is sedation. The action might look the same, but the intention tells the truth. This is not about guilt. It's about awareness. You are not weak for craving comfort. You are human. But when comfort becomes your compass, you lose direction. The stronger your indulgences grow, the softer your self-belief becomes. Eventually, you don't avoid effort because it's hard, you avoid it because you've forgotten you can endure it. That's the great cost. Not the sugar or the sleep lost or the money spent. It's the erosion of identity. The slow but steady message to yourself that you can't be trusted with discomfort. But here's the good news: discipline is always one choice away. You don't need to fix everything. You need only interrupt the drift. You can pause, breathe, and choose differently. One right decision starts a ripple, too. Self-love isn't found in spoiling yourself. It's found in leading yourself. Even when the world says indulge, you can say, "Not now. I'm building something." Because the greatest indulgence of all is waking up to a life you're proud of. And that's not bought in a moment of ease, but built through many moments of effort. Indulgence feels harmless in the moment but compounds over time. Comfort can become a silent thief of confidence and clarity. Choosing discipline over escape rewires your identity and restores momentum. What indulgence in your life feels small but is slowly shaping a story you don't want to live? Today, resist one small indulgence. Replace it with an action that aligns with who you want to become. Start the ripple. Chapter 6: Training the Inner Voice. Inside every person lives a voice that narrates their story. It speaks in quiet moments, in front of mirrors, in the silence after failure, and just before courage. This voice can be a coach or a critic, a whisper of strength or a hiss of doubt. And here's the truth most never learn: that voice is trained. It does not come pre-written. It echoes the choices you make and the standards you keep. Self-discipline is how you teach that voice what to say. Most people assume the inner voice is fixed, shaped by upbringing or personality. But science says otherwise. Neural pathways strengthen through repetition. The more you speak a thought, the more familiar it becomes. If your internal narrative has been, "I always quit," or "I can't do hard things," it's not prophecy, it's pattern. And patterns can be broken. The act of following through, again and again, teaches your mind a new script. Not just through affirmations or mantras, but through proof. When you do what you said you would do, wake up early, finish the reps, turn off the distraction, you give your brain evidence that you are trustworthy. Over time, your inner voice shifts. It begins to say, "You're someone who follows through," because now it has reason to believe it. Think of a piano. The first time you strike a note, it's uncertain, hesitant. But with practice, your fingers find it instinctively. The same is true with self-talk. The voice of discipline doesn't shout. It grows stronger with each decision aligned with your values. That strength becomes your inner music. In cognitive behavioral therapy, one powerful practice is called behavioral activation. Instead of waiting to feel motivated, you take the action first. Emotion follows motion. The same applies to the voice inside. If you wait to feel confident to act, you may wait forever. But if you act as someone who believes, eventually the belief will follow. Your actions train your thoughts, not the other way around. This is the secret to lasting transformation. Not hype or emotional peaks, but repeated practice. Discipline, done consistently, rewrites the voice inside you. And once that voice changes, everything changes. Because nothing shapes behavior more than identity. But beware, the critic won't vanish without resistance. It will still speak. Especially in moments of doubt, fatigue, or failure. See? You haven't changed. You'll fall back. That's when you remind yourself, discipline isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. You are not your worst day. You are what you choose next. There's a story told of a Native American elder explaining to his grandson the battle within each person. Two wolves live inside us, he said. One is fear, doubt, and self-sabotage. The other is strength, courage, and discipline. The boy asks, which one wins? The elder replies, the one you feed. Every disciplined act feeds the right wolf. So listen to your voice today. Not to obey it, but to observe it. What does it say when you're tired, when you stumble, when you win? And more importantly, what do you want it to say? Then teach it. Not by force, but by consistency. By honoring small commitments. By aligning your actions with your highest self. The more you do, the more the voice within becomes an ally, not an enemy. And that inner ally is the foundation of real power. Your inner voice is trained by repetition and aligned action. Discipline rewires self-talk through lived evidence, not empty affirmations. Transformation begins when your inner voice starts to believe in you. What messages has your inner voice repeated that no longer serve who you want to become? Keep one small promise today and mentally note it, then whisper to yourself, that's who I am. Start feeding the right voice. Chapter 7: The Discipline of Letting Go. A sculptor stands before a block of marble, not with the goal of adding, but of removing. With every strike of the chisel, something is lost, but in that loss, the true form begins to emerge. This is the paradox of progress. Sometimes, the most disciplined act isn't pushing harder, but releasing what no longer belongs. Letting go is not often associated with discipline. We imagine discipline as grit, sweat, effort. But it also requires surrender, the willingness to loosen your grip on habits, identities, and relationships that silently sabotage who you're becoming. Holding on can feel like strength, but sometimes it's resistance in disguise. Consider the climber scaling a mountain. There comes a point where the weight of unnecessary gear becomes the threat, not the terrain. The path upward demands lightness. So too does growth. You cannot carry everything with you. Self-discipline is the ability to look at what once served you and say, thank you, and then, it's time. We stay in comfort zones because they're familiar, not because they're right. The job that pays well but steals your peace. The friendship wrapped in guilt instead of growth. The daily rituals that soothe but no longer strengthen. These things don't scream at us. They whisper, slowly draining our fire while convincing us to settle. Neuroscience confirms that the brain is wired for efficiency. It prefers familiar patterns, even destructive ones. Letting go interrupts those patterns. It feels like danger. But in truth, it's a return to alignment. Discipline in this sense is not about force, it's about faith. Faith that by releasing what weighs you down, you make room for what lifts you up. Philosopher Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." And much of that waste comes not from laziness, but from loyalty to the wrong things. Discipline challenges that loyalty. It asks hard questions. Does this habit honor me? Does this belief still serve me? Is this identity still true? In Japanese culture, there's a tradition called kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold. The cracks aren't hidden, they're illuminated. The flaw becomes part of the beauty. Letting go doesn't mean pretending the past didn't matter. It means choosing to honor it without being bound by it. It's looking at your cracked parts and deciding to rebuild, not retreat. This practice of release can be brutal. There is grief in growth. Letting go of old versions of yourself can feel like death. But it's also birth. The moment you stop clinging is the moment you start creating. When you say no to what is misaligned, you say yes to what is waiting. Letting go may not look heroic, but it is. It is an act of profound courage to walk away, not in weakness, but in wisdom. To trust that who you are becoming is more important than what you are used to. To believe that peace is worth the price of discomfort. And remember, discipline is not just the strength to hold on, it is the clarity to release. A sculptor doesn't mourn every chip of marble. They know, each removal reveals more of the masterpiece. So look at your life with gentle honesty. What needs to stay? What needs to go? Then choose, not with panic, but with purpose. Because freedom isn't just found in striving. Sometimes it's found in surrender. Letting go is a powerful form of self-discipline that creates space for growth. Familiarity is not the same as alignment. Some things must be released to move forward. Surrender is not weakness, it is wisdom in action. What are you still holding on to that once served you but now silently holds you back? Identify one habit, belief, or obligation that no longer aligns. Begin the process of release, write it down, speak it aloud, or step away gently today. Chapter 8: The Long Game. There's a kind of strength that doesn't shout, doesn't sprint, and doesn't sparkle in the moment. It's the strength of staying. Of showing up again. Of doing the work when the novelty has worn off and the results are still invisible. That's the long game, and self-discipline is its quiet engine. We live in a world addicted to immediacy. Fast results, instant downloads, one-click everything. But real change, the kind that reshapes your life from the inside out, refuses to be rushed. It honors process. And process, by nature, is unglamorous. It's the daily choice to keep going long after the excitement is gone. Discipline thrives in repetition. It doesn't ask, "How do I feel?" It asks, "What did I promise?" Because emotion is a weather pattern, shifting, unpredictable. But commitment is climate. It shapes the terrain of your life. The long game depends on that shift, from being led by mood to being led by mission. In one study on goal achievement, researchers found that people who focused on long-term identity over short-term performance were significantly more consistent. The runner who sees herself as a disciplined athlete shows up more than the one chasing a quick fitness goal. Why? Because when identity leads, behavior follows. Discipline is sustainable when it's rooted in who you are, not just what you want. But the long game also means facing the valley, those stretches where growth is invisible and effort feels unrewarded. The plateau before the breakthrough. The wall before the window. Most people quit here, not because they're weak, but because they didn't understand this was part of the process. They mistook silence for failure. But silence is often the sound of roots growing deep. Nature teaches this. Bamboo spends its first 5 years underground, building a root system so strong it can support rapid growth later. When it finally breaks the surface, it shoots up almost overnight. But that success is not sudden. It was earned in silence. Self-discipline is doing root work. It's trusting the underground season. There's a phrase used in endurance sports, "Run the mile you're in." Not the first one, not the last, just this one. Because obsessing over the finish line can paralyze. But choosing to win the present moment? That's power. The long game is not won in grand gestures. It's won in the daily grind, the small faithful acts no one sees but you. Consider the writer who commits to 500 words a day. The parent who keeps showing up with patience. The recovering addict who chooses one more sober night. None of these things are flashy. But over time, they build something unshakable. Self-discipline may not always be exciting, but it's always effective. And perhaps that's what love really looks like, not a burst of effort, but a sustained presence. Not a sprint to impress, but a slow, steady walk beside your future self. The kind of love that says, "I won't give up on you, not today, not tomorrow, not when it's hard, not when it's quiet." So play the long game. Delay applause. Delay reward. Trade the rush for resilience. Let others chase flashes of fire. You're here to build an ember that won't go out. The world honors speed, but legacy is built by those who endure. Real change happens through consistent repetition, not instant results. Identity-based discipline sustains effort beyond emotional motivation. The long game is won by showing up daily, especially when no progress is visible. Where are you tempted to quit because the results haven't shown yet? Commit to one action today that aligns with your long game, no fanfare, no reward. Just a break in the foundation you're building. Chapter 9: Resistance is a compass. There's a peculiar thing that happens when you stand on the edge of something meaningful, whether it's a new habit, a hard decision, or a bold change. Resistance shows up. It whispers reasons to wait, urges you to stay comfortable, invents distractions that feel urgent but aren't. And yet, The very presence of resistance is proof of proximity to something that matters. Self-discipline doesn't eliminate resistance. It reads it. It listens not for truth, but for direction. Because resistance is not a stop sign, it's a compass. It points to the places where growth is possible and transformation is near. Author Stephen Pressfield calls this inner friction the resistance. It's the force that rises to protect the status quo whenever you try to evolve. It's the mental fog when you sit down to write. The sudden tiredness before the gym. The doubts that surface when you speak up for yourself. But here's the secret: resistance isn't there to break you. It's there to test your resolve. Biologically, the brain seeks safety, not success. It's wired for survival, which means it interprets anything unfamiliar, even good things, as threats. That's why new behavior feels so uncomfortable. Your brain isn't trying to sabotage you. It's trying to protect you from perceived danger. Discipline is what allows you to act anyway. The presence of resistance doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. It often means you're finally on the right one. In fact, the greater the resistance, the greater the potential reward. Resistance surrounds anything that might shift your identity, because identity is powerful. The moment you choose to live differently, your old self begins to panic. Imagine a rocket breaking through the atmosphere. Most of its fuel is burned in the first few moments, overcoming gravity. Resistance is gravity. It's strongest at the beginning, just before breakthrough. But if you keep going, it fades. Discipline is the fuel that gets you through the turbulence. When you train yourself to expect resistance, you stop seeing it as failure. You see it as a signal. Something valuable lies ahead. That morning you don't feel like writing? That's the day the real writer is forged. That workout you want to skip? That's the rep that builds more than muscle, it builds identity. In high-performance psychology, elite athletes are trained to reframe discomfort. Instead of seeing resistance as a problem, they see it as preparation. The more resistance they feel, the more they lean in. Not recklessly, but intentionally. They know, what resists you, reveals you. Philosophers have always understood this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Self-discipline turns obstacles into teachers. The block isn't blocking the path. It is the path. This requires a mindset shift. Instead of avoiding resistance, welcome it. Not because it feels good, but because it means you're doing the work that matters. Comfort never changed anyone. Resistance always has. Each time you confront it, each time you sit down, suit up, show up, you carve a deeper groove of self-trust. You prove to yourself that fear and friction do not get the final say. You do. So let resistance come. Let it whisper and shake and threaten. Then smile, not because you enjoy it, but because you recognize it. It's the signpost of significance. And you're learning to walk through it, not around it. Resistance is not a sign to stop, it's a signal that you're doing something important. Your brain interprets change as threat. Discipline helps you act anyway. Pushing through resistance reshapes identity and builds self-trust. What resistance keeps showing up in your life, and what truth might it be pointing toward? Today, do one task you've been resisting, not to win, but to prove that you are stronger than the impulse to avoid. Chapter 10. Becoming the person who follows through. Somewhere in the quiet between decision and action, a gap appears. In that space lives every unkept promise, every almost started habit, every good intention that never grew roots. Self-discipline is the bridge across that gap. And more than that, it is the process of becoming someone who doesn't just hope, plan, or talk, but follows through. It's easy to admire discipline in others. The artist who wakes before dawn to create. The entrepreneur who grinds through setbacks. The parent who models consistency despite chaos. But what we're really admiring is not their actions, it's their alignment. Their ability to match intention with behavior, again and again. They are not superhuman. They've simply trained their follow-through to be stronger than their excuses. This shift doesn't happen all at once. It begins in micro-moments. Putting on shoes even when motivation is gone, writing the email even when your brain protests, declining the impulse that once ruled you. With each act, your brain gathers evidence. You stop being someone who wishes and become someone who acts. The narrative changes from, I want to be disciplined, to, I am someone who does what I say I will do. Psychologists call this self-efficacy, the belief that you can influence your outcomes. The more you follow through, the stronger this belief becomes. It's not about perfection. It's about reliability. Trust isn't built by never slipping, it's built by showing up again after you do. And here's the secret most people miss. The more you follow through, the less you need to force discipline. It becomes your default. Like brushing your teeth, it stops being a battle and starts being part of who you are. That's the quiet miracle of consistency. It replaces the need for constant motivation with the power of identity. But identity isn't just built through repetition. It's shaped by what you say to yourself during the hard moments. Do you label yourself as lazy or lost? Or do you speak as someone in process, still becoming, still building, still worthy? The person who follows through learns to see failure not as an identity, but as a moment. A moment that can be answered with action. There's a story about a man who ran every day for 10 years. Rain, illness, weddings, funerals, he ran. One day, a reporter asked, "How did you stay so motivated?" He replied, "I didn't. I just decided I was a runner, and runners run." That is the power of identity. It makes hard choices feel natural, not negotiable. Becoming that kind of person doesn't require a dramatic overhaul. It requires daily proof. Discipline is a slow accumulation of wins. They don't need to be big. They just need to be real. 5 extra minutes of focus. 1 resisted urge. A task done before delay. Every act of follow-through etches a deeper belief. This is who I am now. The world will try to define you by your past. But discipline dares to define you by your future. It's not a tool for controlling your life. It's a compass for directing it. Each time you honor your word, even in something small, you carve a path toward the version of you you've always wanted to meet. And eventually, one quiet day, you realize you've become that person, not because of a single grand decision, but because you built 1,000 small bridges across the gap between your intentions and your actions. Discipline transforms intention into identity through consistent follow-through. Self-efficacy grows as you prove to yourself that your actions align with your goals. Following through in small ways builds the foundation for lasting change. What is one commitment you can consistently keep to begin reshaping how you see yourself? Choose one daily action, small but meaningful, that you will do no matter what for the next 7 days. Let your follow-through speak. Chapter 11. What would love do? At the end of every excuse, every delay, every whispered maybe tomorrow, there waits a question, simple, disarming, and impossibly powerful. What would love do? Not love as sentiment. Not love as indulgence or permission. But love as fierce clarity. Love that does not flinch from discomfort. Love that sees the long road and still chooses to walk it. Love that refuses to let you remain small when greatness is calling. Self-discipline, when stripped of shame and redefined through love, becomes a sacred act of remembering who you are. It's not a whip. It's a compass. It points you back to the truth you keep forgetting every time life gets loud, that your future self is worthy of sacrifice today. That the life you want will cost you comfort, and that the price is worth it. The greatest transformations don't begin with punishment. They begin with tenderness. Not softness, but strength directed by care. Saying no to the extra drink, the late scroll, the skipped run isn't an act of suppression. It's an act of protection. It's saying, I will not abandon myself in this moment, even if no one is watching. Ask anyone who's built something lasting, a marriage, a business, a recovery, a masterpiece, and they'll tell you, it wasn't talent or luck. It was discipline. But more than that, it was devotion. An unwillingness to betray the vision when it got hard. An unshakable decision to love what they were becoming more than what they were craving. Research shows that people who frame their goals in emotional, identity-based language are more likely to sustain them. I'm someone who honors my body lasts longer than I want to lose weight. I love who I'm becoming outlives I need to fix myself. When love leads, willpower follows. Discipline isn't always grand. Sometimes it's washing the dishes when you'd rather not. Sometimes it's pausing before the impulse takes over. Sometimes it's forgiving yourself for breaking a streak and choosing not to spiral. The discipline of returning is just as sacred as the discipline of beginning. And that return, that quiet decision to begin again without drama or delay, is how you win the war in your head. You don't shame your way to change. You show up, again and again, like someone who is loved and learning to live like it. There's an old saying, discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. But love reframes the question. It doesn't just ask what you want. It asks what kind of life you're willing to build. What kind of person you're willing to become. And whether you're willing to love yourself enough to fight for it when it's hard. This isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming consistent. Not through force, but through alignment. Through remembering that love, real love, often shows up in invisible moments. When you close the laptop, set the alarm, breathe through the craving, or lace your shoes. It shows up not in what the world sees, but in what you choose when no one else is around. What would love do? That's your new standard. Not guilt. Not hype. Not fear. Love. Because love chooses what is hard when it leads to what is true. It says no when no protects what matters. It stays when staying is boring. It shows up when showing up isn't exciting anymore. So when you reach the next decision point, when comfort calls, when old habits knock, pause and ask that question. Not the easy one. The right one. What would love do? Then do that. Self-discipline becomes sustainable when rooted in self-love, not self-punishment. Love-driven discipline protects who you're becoming more than it pleases who you are now. Consistent return to aligned action is more powerful than perfection. In your next hard moment, what would it look like to choose from love rather than fear, shame, or impulse? The next time you face resistance, pause and ask, what would love do? Let that question guide your response, not just once, but every time. Take care and be well.